By the end of this tutorial, we'll build a video conferencing application much like this one, where you can join in using your name and a room code with options such as to mute your audio or completely hide your video. This video conferencing application would be completely built using React and the 100ms SDK. You can deploy it and share a link to a friend for them to join in on the call as well. So to get started, I'll open up my terminal and navigate to my desktop. I'll be creating a new React app. For this, I'll use Vite and run the command npm create Vite latest video chat app. And once the project is created, I can open it in a code editor of my choice. The React app is ready. You'll see it has all the files that are there in a React project, such as the main.jsx file and some CSS files. I'll get started by removing some of the default code here. So I'll empty out the starter code. I'll remove these assets that I don't need, and also the public folder. Once ready, I can navigate to my main.jsx file and open up the terminal. First step would be to add the 100ms React SDK. For this, we'll run the command npm install @100ms live/React SDK latest. This should add the 100ms React SDK to the dependencies inside our package.json file. Now inside our main.jsx file, we'll wrap the entire application with HMS room provider component. This would let us use hooks for state and action. You'll see the 100ms room provider being imported from the 100ms React SDK. Now we can go to our source folder and create a components folder. We'll start working on our joinform.jsx file. This form would let us collect username and room code fields from the user, as shown in the demo earlier. We'll start by using the form element add an h2 with join room and two input fields. So the input field would be required. It would have an ID. We'll call this name, and it would have a type which would be text. We'll set the name as name itself and a placeholder value which will be your name for user to enter their name. We'll duplicate this input field and replace the placeholder text in the second input field with room code. Quickly make some changes to the name field here and call this room code, and the ID as room code, room dash code. We'll wrap the two input elements inside a div and call this and give this div a class name called input container. This class name would be required later when adding CSS. Now let us come to the top of the join form. Here we will create input values which would have the name and the token in it, and use state hook to set these input values later on. So I'll type in name and token and set them to empty strings for now. Now I can create a function called handle input change. And now pass this as the on change to our input elements type in on change and pass in the handle input change there, and value to input value dot name. And for the second input element, pass in the on change, handle input change. And we wouldn't be passing in the value right now because we'll take this room code and generate an odd token using it. So now let us move on to handle submit functionality. Here, first of all, we'll prevent default. And pass this handle submit to the on submit of our form element. Just under this, we'll create our username and room code and set them to the input values. Now we will use this room code to fetch an odd token. So we can create odd token equal to await and use the HMS actions from 100ms React SDK. For this, we'll create an instance of HMS actions. We'll use the use HMS actions hook from the 100ms React SDK. For this, we'll create an instance called HMS actions and type in use HMS actions. This should import it from the 100ms React SDK, and we can use this HMS actions to get odd token by room code and pass in a room code there. Now we can call the HMS actions.join method, which would require a username and the odd token that we just generated. So we can pass in those. And for error handling, wrap this HMS actions.join inside a try and catch. We can log any errors that occur. Once we are done with this, we can return to our app.jsx file and add the form that we just created here. So I can quickly type in join form and it should import join form from the components folder. I can also wrap this join form inside a div with the class name app. We can run this to test this out and we would see something like this. We have an audio only conference room ready to use, but let us start working on leaving the room. Before we go ahead with adding the video, let us add a way to leave this room. So again, using the use HMS actions hook, for which I'll create an HMS actions instance. I can use the use effect hook from React. Inside this, for a window unload, I can call this HMS actions dot leave and pass HMS actions to the dependency array. So for Windows unload, let us call HMS actions dot leave and pass HMS actions in the dependency array. Now let us work on adding the video tiles. I'll start by creating a new component called conference.jsx and quickly type in RAFCE to create a new component called conference. Inside this, I'll get a list of the peers using the HMS store available from the 100ms React SDK. From the HMS store, I want to get select peers, which needs to be imported as well. The conference component will render a list of peers. We can get these list from the store and render them. Inside our conference component, I'll give it a div with the class name conference section. And an h2 called conference. I'll create another div with the class name peer container, which would have our peer component to show the video of each user. So before typing code any further here, let us work on this peer component. I can return to my components folder and create a new file called peer.jsx. Create a new component called peer. To render the video, we need to call attach video method of HMS action, which accepts a track ID and a DOM element. But we have abstracted this implementation inside the use video hook for ease. The use video hook would return an object video ref given a video track ID. This video ref can be used to set a video element meant to display the video. The hook will take care of attaching and detaching video and will automatically detach when the video goes out of view to save on bandwidth. So inside the div of our peer component, we can give it a class name peer container and create a video element which would take in this video ref, pass to the ref. We can pass this video ref to the video element, give it a class name peer video, and if the peer is local, we can give it a local class name or leave that empty. To this video element, we'll also set autoplay and muted and also plays inline property. Lastly, we can create a div with the class name peer name to add peer name to it. So we'll get the peer name, the username that they have entered, and if it's a local peer, we can append u to this peer name or leave it empty. Awesome. Once we are done with the peer.jsx, we can return to our conference component, and here from the list of peers, map each peer and render the peer component for them. So I'll use peers.map and take every peer from the list and pass it to the peer component that we have just created. So I'll type in peer, get that component imported, and to the key, and as the key, pass in the peer.id and the peer to it. Lastly, I can return to my app.jsx file and change the UI based on the connection state. So from the HMS store, I can get is connected using select is connected to room, which would tell me if the peer is connected to the room. It should import select is connected and use HMS store from the 100ms React SDK. And to the leaving function that we had created earlier, I can check if the peer is connected and only call HMS actions.leave if they are. I will also have to pass this is connected to the dependency array. Inside our div with the class name app, I can remove this join form for now. Depending on the value of this is connected, I can either show conference view, which is the component that you have just created. And if they are not connected, I can show them the join form so that they can enter their name, username, and generate an auth token. Again, we'll return to our components folder and do the last part, which is to add a footer.jsx file. This footer component would have options to mute audio or hide your video. So inside our footer.jsx, I'll create a new footer component and use AV toggle from the 100ms React SDK. So I'll get the values of is local audio enabled, is local video enabled, and toggle audio and video from the use AV toggle hook from the 100ms React SDK. So let's do that. And then inside our component, we can create a div with the class name control bar, add a button which would on click toggle the audio, and if local audio is enabled, show the mute button for the user to mute it, or show the unmute button. Copy this button, paste it again, and this time use it to toggle video. And if the local video is enabled, I can show hide, and if it's not, unhide button. We'll give this button class name, which would be button control. And return to our app.jsx file to add this footer to the view. So inside the app.jsx file, just under conference, we can add this footer component. We'll wrap the two components and add it like this. Now we are ready to test out our application. I can run the project using npm run dev, and it should launch the app on the local host. Now let us see how you can get a room code to use. Head over to 100ms.live. If you do not already have an account, click on the try for free button and log in with either Google, GitHub, or email. This is the dashboard that I would see. And I can click on the create template button. Here, I would select video conferencing as my use case for this example. Click on configure and give this template a name and a subdomain. Select a server region that is closest to me and click on the experience button. This should successfully create a template and room for me. I would have two roles, host and guest. And I can go back to the dashboard. You would see for the given template, there is a room created here, and you can click on the join button and copy the room code for host from here. Now we can use this room code inside our created application to join a room. So right now if we run the project, you'll see like this is very bare minimum. You can enter your name and the room code and click on the join button, and it will show your video in this format. But this is because we haven't added any CSS right now, but we are able to build out this application completely in React with video conferencing enabled. So I'll return to my code, and inside the index.css file, paste the CSS code. So I'll have this linked in the description below. You can find this CSS file from the link in the description. and we'll paste it. So if you remember, we have already named all the classes, and it uses those classes to add some CSS like the input container, the conference section, the classes that we have added when writing our code, button control, and all this. So when I save this file, I can return to my application and it would have the CSS added to it, making it look much better. So you'll see like the join room now has a proper form that we can click on, join, and it should show us our video conferencing application. So now we have our complete video conferencing application ready. You can host it, share the link to your friends, have them join in, and you'll have your own video app built out. You can customize it in your own way. And that is it for this tutorial. I hope you were able to follow along and build your own video chat app using 100ms SDK and React. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.